So tonight we're going to talk about 5G, something called Airgig, and also some other new kind of 5G-like radiation issues that we're already facing or soon to be facing, it seems, and why they're so important to understand and address. The normal disclaimer: nothing in this presentation is meant to treat, cure, prevent any disease, and so on. You can read the disclaimer. Now, first, before we get started on Airgig and some things, I want a quick review of 5G in general, because I know we have a lot of new people here tonight that may not have seen some of our webinars before. And I got to tell you, if you haven't seen our webinars before, we discuss things that aren't discussed in the world of EMFs. And there's a good reason for that. We're doing a lot of things right that nobody's doing yet. But let's review some of this 5G. So 5G is an EMF, electromagnetic frequency, okay? It is radiation. Okay, electricity is radiation at a lower frequency, and then we have, sorry, I'm looking at Zoom doing something strange. EMF, electricity is a low frequency. We have microwaves at a higher frequency. We have X-rays and nuclear power at a super high frequency. It's all radiation. It's all photons carrying energy, okay? Just the frequency change determines what kind of radiation it is. Now, here's what a 5G tower looks like. Here's one. There's many types. Okay, this is just one. They usually try to blend them in. A lot of times they're cylinders. Sometimes they're little squares or rectangles on top of poles and buildings and towers. And I mean, there's no rhyme or reason, depends on where you live. There's all shapes and sizes. But this is a pretty good something or other to look forward to, or look forward in your neighborhoods. Here's an example of one on a flagpole. So you can see my cursor here, right where the flag's hanging. They hide it right back there. They hide it in trees. They hide it on buildings. You never know where these things are going to be. So here's another couple that are very commonly on street lights, traffic lights, things like that. This is a T-Mobile and a Verizon one in the old neighborhood I used to live in. And I'm going to go fast because I'd like to get this done in 30 minutes if I can, because we have a lot of important stuff, and then sometimes there's a lot of questions. So what's 5G used for? Before we start getting into what's dangerous about it, what's bad about it, and all that, you know, there is a good use for this. Everybody says, I got high-speed internet on my phone, I can live stream video, I got enough. Well, there's a lot of aspects, technological aspects that will come out with 5G, so it's not all bad news. You can have a doctor operating from 3,000 miles away. Instead of him flying to you, you flying to him or her. You can get an operation from the most famous, best doctor ever for a lower cost, because if you have this kind of technology, the precision can be perfect or near perfect. There's a lot of other things you can Google and look at what 5G could and will be used for. Now, the negative side, down the bottom, you got spying. It's real easy to collect a lot of data off a lot of people. You have 4G and 5G can both be used as weapons. You know, there's a lot of that side of things too. But it's not all bad. I got to tell you that. And I'm not against technology whatsoever, because I believe it can be fixed. Now, a little point for some of you new guys, especially, 5G and 4G are very similar. I got to tell you that there's so many misconceptions and misstatements based on no science, or little understanding out there in our industry that kind of drives me freaking crazy. And if you've heard me before, you understand. I just want to educate people on really the truth of what's going on. Now, 4G and 5G are very similar. They're more similar than you're going to be led to believe. I'm not saying 5G is not a little worse, but I'm going to tell you it's not for the reasons you're being told. 4G, for example, your router, every router has a 2.5 and 5 gigahertz or billions of waves per second wave. And the 5 gigahertz wave is about 6 centimeters in length, and it travels light speed like all EMFs do. Well, a 5G, one of the higher 5Gs right now is Verizon out there, and that's 25 gigahertz. Most of it is less than your router. As a matter of fact, all the other ones so far pretty much are less than what your router gives off, okay? Verizon is the only one right now putting up towers that are over what your Wi-Fi router does. And even at the 25 gigahertz, which is one of the highest ones out there, second highest, the wave is 1.2 centimeters in wavelength. That's not a ton different. This millimeter wave, be afraid thing, just FYI. Why am I afraid? I'm a person that asks why, how. I want to know. Just don't tell me it's going to be so horrible because you think so. You know what I mean? So just FYI, it's not that different. Now 4G, you can see at the bottom, just the FYI, is 10 million waves a second to 5 billion waves a second, generally speaking. 5G is a 5th generation of frequencies that they put out for sale for anybody that has enough money, company-wise, to buy and use. They range between 450 million, which is way below 4G's top tier, all the way up to 90 billion waves a second, and that's the stuff that makes people nervous. I would be nervous if I didn't think this was a fixable problem. So all this stuff is radiation. Electricity frequencies at the top here, 60 waves per second is plenty fast enough when it's polarizing, when it's man-made. If you got enough of that, you can have just the same amount of issue as you can with 5G and what's coming 6G, 7G, 8G, and all the rest. It's still not good. The higher frequencies are just adding a ton more radiation to what we're already seeing. Now, dirty electricity is the next one. We just call that a name that goes up to 100,000 hertz or waves per second. The radio and microwave range, this is where all the stuff that people are talking about, cell phones, Wi-Fi, 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, pretty soon 6G, 7G, 8G, and so on, they're pretty much all going to be in this radio microwave range. Light is trillions of waves per second. So the radio and microwaves is where all our concern is, and that's where most of the man-made issue is. But guess what? When you flick a light on in your house, the frequency is trillions of waves per second. It's man-made, it's polarizing, it's not good. If frequency was the only concern about EMS, like 4G versus 5G, then light would therefore be much, much worse, right? And I'm here to tell you that is not correct. Don't be afraid of just a higher frequency. It's fixable. If you have an incandescent light bulb in your house, that's a real nasty kind of light. It's very chaotic. It's very polarizing. Okay, that's not a good light, but our solutions can pretty easily fix that, okay? Just like I believe we can pretty easily take care of the other stuff. Now, I drew a line there because at the bottom, you have ultraviolet light, which goes into the trillions, hundreds of trillions, and quadrillion light range, and X-rays and nuclear power and all the rest. So the reason I drew a line there is really important for you new people, especially. When you go underneath of this line on this page, the highest level frequencies, this is the stuff that can directly hurt you, okay? This is the stuff that physicists eventually took 50 years to find out that this is ionic and it can pull rip electrons off atoms and directly harm us. The difference between below this line and above all the lower frequencies, the lower frequencies can't directly hurt you, says every physicist you will ever talk to that knows what their business is, cannot damage DNA, cannot do these things. So then they end up arguing with the biologists who have studies that say, well, wait a minute, I have 20,000 studies worldwide that show that these microwaves and this electricity, all this stuff is causing DNA damage and a host of other health issues. So what is going on here? And we're going to make sense of this in a minute. The stuff above the line harms you a totally different way indirectly than the stuff below the line. This is an important concept. This is what sets our thinking, our solutions totally apart from everybody else. Everybody else is still thinking that the process is, that these electricity waves at low power are directly hurting us somehow. And we say, no, we agree with the physicists on that. So there's a different way. We'll get into that in just a sec. So what devices are going to use this 5G stuff, including Airgig and the stuff we're going to talk about tonight? Nearly everything, your cell phone, your tablet, all the stuff that's in your house really close to you, which is kind of a bummer. But that's pretty much everything. Now, one more super quick point. I'm not trying to promote 5G, but heck, without 5G, we're going to get in trouble because this is the data usage, the download data usage in the United States over the last 4 years or 5, and then a projection for 2021 or 2021. We're going to eventually run out of 4G. Like we're going to say, oh gosh, I can't live stream my favorite video anymore, So just FYI, if you like your technology that much, or those who do, 5G is going to come in handy. And a quick review before we continue on to Airgig. Real quick, what causes an EMF to become harmful then? The world, the industry of EMFs, all the experts, all the PhDs and the doctors and all the great sounding acronyms that they have before and after their name. They mean well. They say great things about the cause and effect studies, and there's amazing good information out there about how it can harm you and how important this is. But so many people talk about the amplitude. That's how much EMF there is, and the frequency being high being worse, saying, oh, you know, the more frequency there is, the worse it is, and then we're doomed, and then the more radiation there is, the worse it is. That's not really true. If that were true, you'd walk out in the sun, you'd get 200 and some thousand microwatts per meter squared of radiation, and that would do the VGCC problem just as bad, if not worse, than your cell phone would. And using a cell phone wouldn't be any different than walking outside. It's not true. Anyway, subatomic chaos is the thing about EMFs that are the issue. And the amplitude and frequency can be what you consider so bad, a lot of amplitude and a high frequency, but yet you have little to no subatomic chaos, and that's not something you got to fix or worry about. For instance, walking out in decent light, like an incandescent light bulb, not an issue. Now, again, a super quick review for those who haven't been with us very long. The EMF here in red does not directly damage DNA, again, says all the laws of physics, okay? So EMFs are shaking and vibrating molecules, much like happens in a microwave oven. It's shaking them, not enough to heat the chair you sit on, the floor you walk on, and so on, but it's enough that causes a reaction in our cells, the VGCC reaction, and then all these other bad things happen. So this is largely from Dr. Martin Paul. We added to his theory on how we're getting damaged. We definitely added this giant blue arrow about the subatomic chaos. This is the key. Why is this so important? Because A, if the EMF is not really doing the damage, we don't need to block it, okay? If you do block it, you have no cell phone service, you have no Wi-Fi router, you have no FM radio, and so on and so on. Not to mention blocking it incorrectly, which is most of the time being done, can cause more issues. So be very careful trying to block it. But if you address that second domino, subatomic chaos, which is what we're addressing, the root cause of the issue with our solutions, which is very different than anything out there that I've seen, you can make all the other dominoes stop falling and you got a winner. So again, 4G and 5G dangers. 4G, I've got to make this point before we move on to Airgig and 5G. 4G is already unbelievably, extremely bad, okay? 5G is just more of the same problem. It's not a different problem. It's not a different wave that causes a whole different thing. You need a different solution. No, it's more of the same problem, okay? I think I've pounded that drum hard enough. There's over 20,000 EMF studies, over 10,000 public and 10,000 military, I'm told, studies that are around the world proving that 4G, 3G, 2G, and all the lower frequencies like power lines and so forth are already harming humans. And here's two quick studies that I will really summarize, but if you haven't heard this, you've got to hear it. The European Union paid over 3 million euro across 11 institutions, not one dude, okay? 11 institutions to do a DNA study. How much DNA damage is happening from this thing that we all hold up to our head all day and get on the internet all day? And this is years ago before it's gotten so strong. How much DNA damage comes off this thing compared to chest x-rays? And after 3 million plus euro and all these institutions, this is DNA damage strand breaks done by Franz Adelkofer and others in the study. They decided it was pretty similar to see 24 hours on a cell phone cause the same DNA strand breaks using the assay method as about 1,600 chest x-rays. Oh my gosh. I still can't see that and not go, oh my freaking gosh, in my head. I love to tell people, let's say they're wrong. It's a 11 institutions all got together and they're all wrong. They're 10 times wrong. Okay. What if it was 160 chest x-rays because they're all 10 times wrong? That's too many x-rays. I'm not going to get that every day. I don't want this. Okay. So this is a massive problem. And this has caused a lot of European countries and others to make changes and not allow cell phones in elementary schools and ban Wi-Fi from schools and all sorts of great stuff as a start. And again, I'm not saying do that because I think we can remediate it. But anyway, second study. So that was Europe, US government. They know what's going on. Of course, you know that. They spent over $30 million, the most expensive cell phone study in the history of EMFs, over 10 years studying 2G and 3G. That's really low frequencies compared to what we do. They had it at a low level. They had it not chaotic, because the more chaotic it is, the more chaos it causes. They actually designed the study to be okay. And the results were unanimous within all the scientists in the group, and with all the scientists in an external panel, all agreed that the rats were getting cancer. All of them agreed radiation from 2G and 3G gave rats cancer in the studies. That is your government, produced it in 2018, published at the National Institute of Health. They know it. You can go Google it because they're never going to be on the news telling you this stuff, but it's out there. Again, it's fixable, so I'm over it, but you should know that this is, more well known than maybe you think. So why is 5G such a huge concern? There's over 100 towers more needed than 4G towers. So they're going to be in front of like everybody's house. When I left Pacific Beach, Mission Beach area in California, I had four 5G towers within a block and a half of me. One was 10 yards in front of me. Okay, that's going to be the norm. Okay, that's why 5G is worse. Not because of the kind of radiation so much. Not because I don't understand the millimeter wave. Like, I've read some things, but scientifically they don't really add up to making a lot of sense to me. And I need that kind of to make sense. But it's a lot more the same problem. And we all know the reps have been with us for a while that are sensitive and have testimonials and you name it. And I personally know our stuff works beautifully on 5G. Here's another problem why 5G is so bad. Thousands of 5G satellites are now in low orbit. This is a brand new era. 2020 is not just known for its, the CV ridiculous problem, but it's known for thousands of satellites going up. I think there's 120 a month just from Elon Musk's Starlink project. And I don't think he's out there trying to do bad things. I think his physicists are saying, don't worry, this doesn't harm you. Because scientists, that's pretty much what they're taught. They're not biologists. They don't know about the indirect problems that this is causing. But it's causing. You can walk into Rocky Mountains, and for a lot of practitioners on the call, you're walking around outside, and where are we getting hit by this stuff? In our face? Not so much. We're getting hit on one of the most important, if not the most important, acupuncture point that we have. Right on top of your head, the governor vessel 20 point. By satellites everywhere you walk. 80% of the earth is now getting smashed on top of their governor vessel 20 by 5G satellites in low orbit. Yay, 2020. 60 gigahertz routers, they're coming very soon. That may be a little bit of a problem, but we already got 2.5 gigahertz, which is a nightmare. So I'm not sure that's going to be worse. But because I don't know, because we don't know yet, you might want to avoid this until we know. Okay. And there's one more person out there that could shut down their, turn off their, mute their volume if you don't mind. Okay, finally, let's get to Airgig. And I'm gonna look at the time, make sure I'm cruising along. So Airgig, this is a new thing. Project Airgig is still being developed, so it's not in your neighborhood yet, probably. There are a few neighborhoods that they're testing this in. It's meant to replace routers everywhere. It's gonna be, talk about 5G, like it's going to be on potentially every single electric pole that has electric power lines on it can have one of these on it. So it's going to be right in front of everybody's house. This is going to be inescapable if they do what they're wanting to do. We're already inescapable of 5G and all this other stuff. It's just going to add another of issue. And so this could potentially be everywhere. Again, there's somebody out there that could mute, please, because I hear some background noise. Everybody thinks it's not me. It's not me. All right, so just a reminder, this is in a testing phase. It's not there, but it's going to be connecting to your car, your phone, your laptop, inside of your house when you're on your bed doing your computer. That's the goal of this, okay? Now, I got to say, even though it's not officially out, maybe in your neighborhood yet, they're looking for distributors, and it's still being worked on, distributors to make the parts to put everywhere. There's a lot of other projects that are already implemented or probably soon to be implemented that I want to also address here for you guys. 5G cell towers. You already know about these. They have to be generally 800 to 1,000 feet apart. That's actually not true, but the higher frequencies do need to be that close. Most of the lower frequencies can be a lot further apart than that. But the Verizon ones are the higher frequency ones. Right now, that's the only higher frequency ones. They do need to be pretty darn close to each other so that you can attach to it and get the service. This is just me today, actually. At the end of this, I'll show you a little project I was working on. But this is a T-Mobile, and I was talking to all the guys installing this today, but this is a T-Mobile 5G tower on the left. T-Mobile has a lower frequency, lower than on a cell phone call, lower than 1 gigahertz 5G frequency. So it's really 4G, if you want to call it that. It's the biggest one in the country. It's got the most area coverage in the country of all the companies by far, but it's a low frequency. And just FYI, this is going about 150 feet in the air, because this can go for miles. So it's not the 800 to 1,000 feet, which is always said everywhere, but some of them, like the lower frequencies, can go a lot further. But this is obviously a 4G, like this is the normal ones in the middle, and on the right, one on the left is one of the new looking 5G towers that can go way up there. So really it's getting harder and harder to identify what the heck is a 5G, 4G, what's the problem if all of these little boxes potentially are really terrible. So here's a couple more. Here's a 5G tower on the left. SCADA pole. If you haven't heard of this, supervisory control and data acquisition pole. This one on the right, it looks like a tiny TV antenna. It looks like innocent. It's not innocent. It's terrible. It's almost as bad as this 5G tower right next to it. Promise you. And it's a much lower frequency. The SCADA pole uses frequencies between 72 megahertz or million waves a second up to 970 megahertz. Almost a gigahertz, almost a billion waves a second. Here's another picture of one. You see this very little antenna, it looks like nothing. And it comes down this pole, and there's always a box this big or sometimes bigger, massive power going up to this little tiny thing. And there's a bazillion switches in here, because what it does is well, first it's like a smart meter in that it's relaying information out. Like your electricity meters that are smart meters are sending like a Wi-Fi signal out. But the difference is this one travels much further, and it's much stronger than your smart meter signals. And it monitors a host of possible things, not much more than listed here, but it can monitor and send signals based on electricity usage, transportation of gas and oil pipelines, water distribution, traffic lights, a lot more stuff. They're also equipped to handle government frequencies. I don't necessarily, you can read what the government frequencies are for, but we all know that there might be some frequencies that are for things they don't tell us about because we don't know everything. But it handles a lot of stuff in these things. So therefore, they can be really nasty. One very quick story, I remediated a home in La Jolla, and who knows, she could be on the call tonight, but she had massive improvements overnight. She wasn't sleeping, or workouts were terrible, whatever. She went downhill, and she was just doing awful. We remediated her house. It's like a cloud lifted, and she was working out, sleeping good, all these wonderful things. Maybe a week later or so, she called me and saying, "Oh my gosh, everything suddenly came back today. I don't know what happened." Or like the other day, a few days ago. And so she found out that they put one of these innocent-looking poles at least a half a block away. That was enough to just trash her again. Like, it was really strong, a half a block from her. So we just remediated a little bit more on her house, and then poof, it was back to being awesome immediately. So They are pretty nasty, but you know, remediatable, if that's a word. Bad news, there's so much of this stuff. Here's Facebook working on a couple of projects. One is Terragraph project. This one uses the scary 60 gigahertz frequency that has a high attenuation in oxygen. And I'm going to give you a very short little scientific-y lesson, but I think it's really important. So attenuation means, and I'm just going to give you a little definition, reduction of the amplitude of a signal. Why would a reduction of an amplitude of a signal happen? Well, because that energy is becoming something else. So I'm going to go another term of dissipated energy. This is a process where energy, like an EMF, is transformed from some initial form, which is the EMF that we have man-made coming off these towers, into some final form. This is key. Okay, if you want to understand EMFs and why we're addressing the root cause, the initial form, the EMF, all the physicists are saying, not a problem. I agree. I want to shout it from the rooftop so some of these other very smart guys start wrapping their heads around this and realize their solutions are pointing, it's like they're doing it wrong. You got to understand how this works to be able to remediate it, to fix it, to help people. So it's the stuff that's transformed from one initial form, the EMF, to a final form, which we call subatomic chaos. It's our little coin term. I almost should go copyright that sucker. So the final form is the problem. It's the subatomic chaos. So when you have an EMF reader, side note, and you're reading in your house, how bad are EMFs? If you don't know how to read it, you may be getting completely wrong information because your meter does not read the final form the energy could be in that's causing you the issue. It's going to read the initial form of the EMF, which, again, we agree with the physicists, is not causing you the issue. It's an indirect representation of how bad it is. So I want to tell you this for lots of reasons. One is you got to know how to use the EMF reader. Just don't walk around with those like everybody tells you. Go to your hotel, and if it's good, if it's high, low. No, it can be way off and wrong. It's measuring the thing that doesn't hurt you. So make sure you know more than just walking around with a meter. Again, it's one of those things that everybody thinks they got it under wraps because they got this meter in their hand, and it's a sliver of what's going on. We're working on a meter that's going to measure that final form, and then you're going to know what product works and what doesn't work with a meter. Okay, right now we have to do blood tests and muscle tests and all these other things that we do to show that our stuff's working better than anybody else's. So long story short, this dissipated energy really means more chaos. The more something has attenuation, the more it's not around, the worse it is, the more chaos there is. In other words, 5G is a problem because it oscillates real fast, and it's not this like the size of the wave doing this stuff. What it is it oscillates so fast that because it's traveling, it's oscillating so fast that it hits a lot of molecules as it's traveling, becoming a different form of energy, which is the problem. So don't measure 5G, well, you can't because there's no meter yet, but don't measure 5G with a meter and say, oh, I'm fine. No, no, no. That energy doesn't disappear. It turns into something else that your meter doesn't pick up on. That's the problem. And 5G does have more attenuation than 4G, which has a ton more attenuation than electricity, but electricity still is a problem. So it's all a problem, but I'm just telling you the degrees of how this works. So bottom of this page, stop beating a dead horse, but 2.5 gigahertz is your Wi-Fi router. Guess what has a lot of attenuation in 2.5 gigahertz? Plasma, which my scientific term here, water with stuff in it. Okay, water with stuff in it. Guess what we're made of? Water with stuff in it, right? So the router in your house, in your school, at your job, everywhere around us now, affects water with stuff in it more than anything else. And that's the free frequency, and that's what we decided to make. A microwave oven is that, and a router is that. Are we freaking crazy? Yes, I guess we are. So that's the free frequency, and guess what the other free frequency is that anybody doesn't have to buy the license to use? It's out there for all the companies to share. 60 gigahertz, which happens to affect the O2 oxygen molecules more than the others. This is a huge issue, both. Okay, so don't be afraid of 60 gigahertz, because you better be afraid of 2.5, because it's affecting everything in you. But the oxygen molecules, I certainly don't want to affect and see what that could be doing bad. So that's a little short layman explanation of 60 gigahertz. Again, I feel like this is probably easy to remediate. I really do. Everything else has been. It's the same issue. I think it's easy to take care of. So one more, besides Airgig, besides that, we have Terragraph. Okay, here's a network that is the 60 gigahertz that steers around objects and buildings. It's that famous 60 gigahertz, as we said, and it connects to Wi-Fi, small cells, Ethernet. So this is going to travel through the neighborhood, around buildings, bend all around, like just wreck a neighborhood. Then it's going to connect to the side of a building here. And then that side of the building really can't put 5G, 60 gigahertz anyway, through a wall. That doesn't go through a wall because the attenuation, almost none of it comes out the other side. Now, bad energy enters the building. The final form of energy we don't want is around, but the original energy, the original frequency is gone. So they have to put up these things and connect it to Ethernet and then, run that through the building. So everybody will have wonderfully high internet. And if this was 100% safe for everybody, everywhere, all the time, I'd say this is amazing. It's awesome. Again, I want to be the one that remediates every one of these towers, which we're working on. Here's the funny part. Testing of Terragraph. Guess where they're testing it? In San Jose, the city of San Jose, and the Facebook headquarters. At the headquarters. So if anybody out there is wondering why maybe Facebook's acting a little nutty this year, I wonder if it's because they just installed Terragraph 60 gigahertz without our products, or a real solution, I'm sure, at their headquarters. Just a side funny note. Okay, so here, Facebook has another project they're working on called Project Aries. This is 96 antennas. This is smaller than it looks, but 96 antennas. What they do is they allow like a frequency of a really narrow range to all be spit out at the same time and not interfere with each other and get, because they space it out, it's called spatial multiplexing. Because they do a certain scientific spatial thing, they can get them all to be, all these live streams to be all clear coming off of this little antenna. My issue is if you don't remediate it, I don't know, but theoretically what it sounds like is this is going to cause more chaos we don't want. Okay, so that could be a bummer to have these around too. And that's in its testing phases, just like this one. Okay, with all that crummy news, I don't know if you can see me, I sit back in my seat. I get over that and I go, holy moly, I'm like sweating. I can't handle this terrible news. There's enough like crazy news going on as it is. There's good news to this story. I'm sure you know. All of this should not be a problem if remediated properly, okay? Cell phone radiation levels, just to give you perspective, cell phone radiation levels have increased, according to a Switzerland scientist, about a quintillion, which is like a 1 with, I think, 16 zeros after it, or 15, in just a decade. So we've taken the cell phone radiation frequencies and increased it an unbelievable amount of, like, you can't even imagine like how high, okay? With that being said, talk to our reps, talk to some of the people that have used our stuff and had amazing testimonials. This is fixable. If this amazing level so far is fixable in many different, with good solutions, then we're real hopeful for all the other junk that we're adding that you just saw. Now, here's a little story too. Side note, I moved from San Diego to Charleston, South Carolina. I had a 5G cell tower this close to my bedroom window and living room window, and I was on the 2nd and 3rd floor. So I looked pretty much directly at it. I slept 15 yards, not even 15 yards from a 5G cell tower. They put it up about 4 years ago. I was there for 3 years. The first night I felt terrible. My wife felt terrible. We're like, what is wrong with us? I'm tired. I'm like flu, but I don't have the flu. Like we were both like, what is going on? Figured out what this was because I never heard of 5G and didn't see one of these towers before. Figured out what it was. remediated our house with more of the same product, and poof, it was magical. I'm 50. I've never been healthier in my life, like not in the last 20 years anyway. Strongest I've ever been in the weight room. I love telling people that because I don't take any weird nutrition. I don't try to be stronger. I just am. Once I remediated the EMFs, man, my life just layers health things that I can't tell you about because I don't want to claim that I'm curing any health concern, whatever's. I've had issue after issue just kind of fade off because while I was in the home, 10 yards from a 5G tower, my wife got pregnant. If anybody's seen video of her, a little girl, but she is a beautiful, healthy, wonderful little girl. My wife pretty much got rid of chronic fatigue from age 4 as she lived in our place 10 yards from this. So do I believe our stuff works? Yep. So some of you guys have seen the blood tests. This is just like one of the videos. This was somebody who came off the street. They have pretty messed up blood. I asked them, you know, they came in talking on their cell phone that didn't have our cell chip on it. And so blood's not supposed to be stuck together and piled up like that. It's supposed to be these red blood cells. It's supposed to be like this. This is the same person, got on a phone call, 3 minutes with our cell chip on, and the blood started looking much better, like it's supposed to. These are red blood cells that deliver oxygen to your body. Then she got on, continued the cell phone call because they're all back to back, took the cell chip off, 3 minutes. This is what it looked like. Probably not what you want to see. Talk to a doctor, don't talk to me. Ask them what this looks like and how this is going to turn out. These blood cells are supposed to deliver oxygen to your body and get rid of toxins and all the rest. And then a 3-minute call, putting the cell chip back on, and you see while, this is really key, while you're exposed to EMFs, you can turn an EMF, apparently, from something bad into something beneficial. That's what the tests seem to strongly show. I did this, my wife did this, my wife's mom, and, you know, I've had so many people do this, and almost 100% of the time, it's the same exact result. With the cell chip on, or we've done it under power lines, next to routers, with remediation of the problem, even a foot from a smart meter, we put the thing on and improvement happens. They go back to looking great. Anyway, so here's some hints, almost wrapping it up. What you should avoid, 5G routers, because I don't know yet about how strong they're going to be. I'm pretty sure I'm going to go get one and remediate with our device chip. I'm sure it's going to be just fine. But if you don't remediate it, avoid that. Avoid military towns, because lately, like San Diego is one of them, they're using some new level EMFs in military towns. So avoid them. If you don't avoid them, ideally you have a rep of ours that can come do muscle testing on your place to make sure it's done, or over remediate your place if necessary, because these just tend to be extra bad. Avoid blocking EMFs. Smart meter, for example, you can put a cover on your smart meter, and all these people talk to, I have testimonials from this. They put a cover on their smart meter, and all that radiation that was supposed to escape away from the house gets bounced back into your house. That's not what you want to do. So you got to be really careful, quote unquote, blocking EMFs. Most of the time people make mistakes. Most of the time it makes it worse. And you don't need to. I don't believe you need to. And avoid products that partially work or don't work. And I really encourage you, if you're still learning this stuff, go to my video on EMF, let's see, on our emfsoul.com. You can go down to the bottom of the page, EMF video archive, and you can look in the video at 9 ways to remediate EMFs. It's going to explain in kind of layman terms grounding and negative ions to how they're going to possibly help, and all the Schumann waves and all the other 9 waves. And it's going to explain to you how they're addressing symptoms or indirectly partially helping what we believe is the absolute root cause, and how our products are addressing the root cause. You can compare in layman terms what they're doing, and really in layman terms, it makes sense. It makes sense if you understand some basic stuff. It's not rocket science, as they say. So a couple other helpful hints if you haven't heard. Absorbable, and I say that because a lot of magnesium just pass right through. If your magnesium makes you get loose stool, you probably got a crummy magnesium. You're probably not absorbing it, and that's why it's passing through so fast. So absorbable magnesium supplements like magnesium glycinate helps prevent the voltage-gated calcium channels from opening, so that could be very beneficial for not being affected as much by EMFs, according to all our research and Dr. Martin Paul's. Second, over-remediate your home. Why? Because constantly our neighborhoods and our houses and our devices and our work are getting worse and worse exponentially. We keep trying to make stronger products. Everybody who's followed us for some time knows, and we try to stay ahead of it, so constantly check in with us. But you need to over-remediate, so you could be fixed today, and then like in 6 months, you're a mess again. So I suggest that if you can afford to. And attend our webinars and get on our emailing list so we can send out messages saying, hey, we just got a new level of satellite, or we just got a new thing coming out. You need to look out for this in your neighborhood. And if you see it, get some more help. And then please watch my video on reproductive devastation. If you haven't seen it already, it's the #1 reason why everybody needs to take this problem seriously. If we want to have people around in 2 generations from now, we need to address it. Because in mouse studies, and I know personally of other animals on farms and things that had power lines coming through, the reproductive system goes down, and eventually you reach a point where it doesn't come back. And so these mice in the 3rd generation, exposed by a lot of EMFs, but under the FDA safety guidelines, by the way, but a lot of EMFs, the 3rd generation of mice couldn't reproduce anymore. Like stopped. They took them away from the EMFs and never came back. There's evidence that suggests this could happen to our generation. And it's not, I'm not going to get into how, but it's the 2nd generation that's going to be exponentially more affected than we are, or even our kids. So it's the grandkids. So that's, I have a daughter. When my daughter was in the womb, her eggs, or what's became her eggs, or going to become her eggs one day, or her kids one day, get 10 times the DNA damage, and they can't heal like what almost all of ours does. So it's a huge problem. Please watch that video. The #1 reason why this is a ginormous issue. This is the #1 reason why this is the biggest toxin. And I don't care if you're into like Roundup and vaccinations and you name it out there, this problem will stop humanity if all the science pointing to it is correct. And a lot of science is. Now, be aware of your street, neighborhood, cell towers, power lines, transformers. When you start seeing that stuff up, you know, call us, call your rep, and get some advice. So if you know our products, we have something to remediate just about everything. This is the order of importance. Home and sleeping area, #1. Cell phone, usually #2, because we live with them. A personal device when you're not home is #3. And then take care of your work or school. And by the way, side note, reminder, if your kid goes to a private school or a public school that has somewhat of an open mind, we have a rep in your area. We will fix the school for free. We will fix the school for free, okay? It's one of the ways we give back. I don't have enough people coming to me. I want more people coming to me. I want to fix schools and churches. We do it for free. It's one of the ways we give back. So FYI. And then what to do. Please spread the word on how important this is. This is monumental. We're not reminded of this in the news every day, so we just forget how important this is. It's unbelievable. The studies that I quoted you tonight, I could go on and on about other studies. This happening, whether you know it or not, okay? And once you reach a certain point, you don't come back from it, and we don't want to get there, guys. So many doctors and scientists fear we could destroy our ability to reproduce. There's so many other issues, but this is the biggest for me. And again, this could be irreversible. So here's some of our products that are the most important. You probably, if you're on this call, you probably have heard, but this box here can be attached to the pipe that comes on and off your electric meter. Or sometimes you can sit it right on top if there's a nice enough ledge. This is the XL Home Harmonizer box, number one thing that you need. Number two is usually the cell chip. Number three is one of these personal devices, credit card size, or you can wear a Fitbit style something on your wrist. And contact your local rep if you need more solutions or what have you. And let me just share before I open it up to questions and stuff. This was my little project today. So you saw the first picture earlier. I have to double check once they turn it completely back up to 100%, but it was about 80% so far. But this monster has like 50 to 60 cell towers on this 180-foot thing, and you can see the crane next to it. They were putting up new ones, 5G, and that's why I was there today. And nice enough to let me in, and we remediated this thing. So this will no longer be affecting the neighborhood around it the way it was, and that's really cool. And so I do believe that all this nasty stuff, and it is nasty, I'm excited because I believe it's totally fixable. And so thank you for listening. I think that's going to do it for this stuff, and I am going to sit around for questions. And actually, I think I might hand out another free product here too.